Good morning. Today is Tuesday, November 22nd, 2022, 2 days before Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving to everyone out there. This is a meeting of the Streets, Traffic and Refuse Committee meeting for the Board of Aldermen. This meeting is called to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Vaquero.
Present.
Alderwoman Howard.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Present.
Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Present.
Alderwoman Peel.
Here.
Chair Tyus.
Present.
Alderman Bosley. We have 6 present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The next order of business is to approve the minutes. I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of Wednesday, November 16th, 2022.
So moved.
Seconded.
Have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Vaquero.
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Peel.
Aye.
Chair Tyus.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. We have 6 aye votes.
Okay, by your vote, you approve the minutes of Wednesday, November 16th, 2022. We now have board bills for review. I need you 3 handsome gentlemen to raise your hand. And we have to do an oath of affirmation of a witnesses now. So I need you to raise your right hand. That will be the police chief, the fire chief, and the street commissioner. And I have to ask you, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, we're going to do, because we have visitors on this first one, we're going to do, take it out of order. We're going to do Board Bill 82, introduced by Alderman Joseph Vaccaro. I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, would you please read the introduction?
Board Bill number 82, introduced by Alderman Joseph Vaccaro, an ordinance directing the director of the City of St. Louis Street Department to install and implement an emergency vehicle traffic signal preemption system.
Thank you. Okay, Alderman Vaccaro, you are recognized on Board Bill 82.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to, I guess, if I could openly, I want to ask the chief, the fire chief, and Jamie, and I guess if you could just, jump in, if that's okay with you.
That's
Madam
fine. In
Chair.
fact, they can leave their mics open so that we can have an interchange of ideas, because that's what you asked them to be here, I believe, for.
Right, because so what I'm interested in, we've had, and Chief, you may or not remember, but at Kings Highway in Mardell, a police officer was killed, by, I guess, during a pursuit, when a car hit him. We've had ambulances turned over. We've had 5 people killed this year, and St. Charles and other areas, go with this, where if you're in a police car or a fire truck, I'd almost even like to see this on the snowplow trucks, where the direction that they're going, the lights turn green. I do know that roughly it's $5,000 a vehicle and roughly $6,000 per stop sign. And I do believe we can use the COVID money. It's definitely a public safety thing, and I believe that. Chief, first off, I would hope you think this is a good idea. How many police cars do we have?
Well, if you roll in the marked and the unmarked fleet, there's several hundred.
Okay.
That would be included in that. Our policy requires our officers to stop and clear every intersection, which means supposed to stop, look both ways, even though they've got their lights and siren activated. They do that. Sometimes it might be a roll, which is, not really appropriate, but they're supposed to do that. When we have accidents at intersections, it tends to be in those occasions where officers are not doing a good enough job clearing that intersection visually, before they enter it.
Well, and even the car, let's just say it's a pursuit. We want, if it clears that, at least it also stops traffic from crossing into, usually it isn't the police car that hits somebody. It's usually, so if we can stop the traffic going into the intersection also.
Yeah.
It might be helpful in the long run, but how many vehicles would you estimate that you have?
I would say 300. So that comes out to what, $1.5 million. And is that a recurring thing? Is there some kind of license?
No, I do believe that it's well, I'm sure there's a long-term charge, but that's something that I have to find out. Right now, I've had our attorney talk to 2 different companies. And I do believe that's for 4 or 5 years. But even so, $1.5 million, that's not as bad as I thought it would be. And what I have to do, I have to put a fiscal note together.
Mhm.
So these are things that I have to know so that I can get this bill wrapped up and moving along. So you're in your best opinion, we're roughly talking $1.5 million.
Right,
Mhm.
just ballpark, and I don't know if that would be every vehicle, but we would certainly want to target those vehicles that would be their first responding cars. So all the marked vehicles, so that, including districts and mobile and traffic, and then the unmarked cars and specialized units and detectives.
So I think what I would do is I'm going to estimate that we're talking about 2 million in police vehicles. And I'd rather be on the high side. I'm on the high side
Yeah.
of the cost also. These were higher numbers. There was 2 different companies apparently that do this according to our attorney. This was the high. I'm doing everything on the high side, so the fiscal note would be, at least a true picture of worst case scenario. And if there is a recurring fee, I'll find that out, and that would also, the money for the recurring fee would also be rolled into my fiscal note. But and so that's kind of what we're hearing. And let me get an idea from the fire chief real quick. Fire chief, all the fire vehicles, ambulances, how many of those do we have?
If
Fire trucks,
remember correctly,
ambulances,
the St. Louis Fire Department, we had a preemption system
right?
in the early 2000s called Opticon. And it was a strobe activated system where we had strobes that were mounted on the fire trucks and most of our first due equipment. And then we had several intersections throughout the city that had these strobe receptors mounted on the mast arms of the lights. That was all paid for through a grant. Fairly good system. Had a few kinks with regards to when you had multiple pieces of equipment responding from different directions, approaching the intersections at the same time. I do know that they've improved this system because of the ability to use the cloud platform and provide blockages. So if I would outfit all of my first responding vehicles, these support vehicles, I probably wouldn't do. We're probably looking right at about 75 vehicles max, and that's max.
Well, look, I'm gonna go with 100 vehicles. Again, this is just so I can put together what I believe is a fair and honest fiscal note. If we were to do this, what it would cost. I'd rather be on the high side than the low side.
My biggest concern is the maintenance that's involved with these type systems, which is where we kind of fell off with the last system we owned, was the maintenance side of it. So, and I have no idea how that would be figured into the fiscal note, but that does become an issue. So I would suggest that we get some type of information on what is required for the maintenance on the trucks, because it takes a little bit of time to keep all these systems running. And then also the coordination between, if the police are going on a call, the fire is going on a call, EMS is going on a call, are we going to have some type of onboard system that lets us know who's approaching an intersection?
Right.
Which they do have now. It comes up on your computer, so you're alerted to certain companies that are all responding into the same area. So
right? I know that St. Charles has it and they're really happy with it. And certainly these are good questions that we're going to find out the answers to. My hope is to get a fiscal note put together, answer some of these questions and get this out of committee to the full floor. It was the vote to get it over. I think we started with the resolution, and on the resolution to look into this, it was unanimous. Not one alderman voted against it. It was unanimous to look into this. So now it's just the next step, and that's how do we do this? And that's why I got the two chiefs and Jamie here, because you're asking me good questions that I'll have answers to, and then at some point we'll actually hope to bring in the companies that actually do this and maybe answer these questions. But I can't move anywhere without some idea of what a fiscal note's going to be. I think the biggest cost, because it's $5,000 per vehicle, and that's again on the high side, and roughly $6,000 per light, per stoplight, and that's why I have Jamie here. Jamie, it seemed like to me that the best routes, and the two chiefs, you can tell me if I'm wrong, would be the snow routes. The snow routes seem to be the most large streets going throughout the city. Any of the chiefs think that would be the best way to go, is to figure this, to start this, do the snow routes?
Well, if I'd have to look at all the snow routes, last time we did this, we kind of based it on our primary routes of the fire department and EMS. We use Grand Avenue to go to the hospitals. We use Kings Highway, so we look at some of our major access routes to hospitals, one. Then we also look at the response routes coming out of the firehouses. So I think it's something we have to look at together and see how we can kind of blend these routes as far as primaries.
Okay.
Yeah,
And-
Chief,
I'm sorry.
when we picked those routes, I was on the consultant side at that time, but was doing that work for the city with the installation. It was just as you said, optical system, which you could consider prehistoric at this time. Definitely the cloud is the solution here. And I think even on your routes where you had the most activity, I don't even think we put them on every signal. I think we put them on the most congested signals on those routes, just to save money. I don't think we'll probably have that limitation now that we don't have to physically install hardware optical receivers at every signal, based on the fact it's all GPS located with the vehicles to the cloud. I don't think we'll have to worry about that. We'll probably be able to cover a whole route versus just the most congested along your highest activity routes.
Like it.
Jamie, how many lights, stoplights do you think we'd have to cover? And again, roughly, they're saying roughly that could be around 6,000 a light, or I don't know if that was intersection. I believe that's a light. How many stoplights do you believe we have in what you, let's just go with the snow route for the minute, which would be the larger route?
Yeah, you probably have probably 200 lights on those major arterials, which are the major snow routes. But again, I don't think you're going to be limited. I don't know how, I'm not as familiar with what Tomar or Opticom or all these folks, or what their pay packages are for that per signal, per device. It may just be the number of intersections, maybe inconsequential, the number of vehicles where it's installed based on the fact it's on the cloud. I don't think we'll be limited by the number of signals, but I would estimate, 200 signals if we concentrate on the arterials, the most heavy traveled for emergency vehicles.
Well, I think for my fiscal note, I'm going to go with 400 lights. I'd rather be way above than below in the estimate. And then I got to figure the maintenance, and I think we would probably roll in something that would have 10 years or whatever maintenance. I have to find out what we can do. Jamie, you might be more aware.
Well, that's what I was going to echo what the chief said. That was the downfall. The one, 15, 20 years ago was the maintenance that comes with it. all that said, though, I think that was more demanding on a maintenance side with all the physical equipment that's out there at every intersection that would potentially get knocked down or be in disrepair, not to even mention what's on the vehicles themselves. So I think it's going to be less than it probably was before, but I would say probably our best bet is to talk to some neighboring agencies that have, or municipalities that have this, and see, is it 10% of the initial installation cost is what you should budget for, by their lessons learned on how much maintenance they're putting in on this stuff. We'd just be, kind of guessing from our side, but I'm sure the manufacturers, the vendors for each of those systems out there probably have some good rules of thumb for maintenance-based budget planning.
What I can do, I'm going to reach out to the two companies that talked to our attorney and just for my fiscal note, but I'm hoping to put a fiscal note together so that by the next meeting, we're ready to roll on this. And I hope to have the answers to the questions about what if multiple vehicles come to an intersection, and the maintenance. So Jamie, if I figured I'm going to double the lights at 400, and you figure it's about, I think they're, according to our attorney, was roughly, you could figure $6,000. I don't know if that was an intersection or a light. So I'm going to go by light, which will give me a higher fiscal note. Originally, I was looking at, I thought it'd be around 15 million. To be honest with you, it's going to be way less than 15 million. If we're talking $1.5 million, I'll just say 2 million for the police cars. And these are rough numbers, I get it. And if we're talking about, even $1 million for the fire equipment, and we're probably in the 3 to 4 million for the street lights. It's well below what I had thought. And then I'll find out what packages, what maintenance packages that we can get with these systems. Does that make sense to everyone? I'm sorry.
Maybe with the talking to those other municipalities, I would assume some of this equipment's a little more specialized in terms of the maintenance. You may have to consider that city forces wouldn't be maintaining this. You may need a contractor or something that does more of that specialized equipment in terms of maintenance, which means it's, going to cost more than city forces. But in your budget planning, I would assume you probably need a highly specialized contractor for that.
Well, I would think that the companies that sell this, just like with the cameras, we went through all this with the cameras, the body camera stuff, where's, how it all worked and all that. So I would hope that the companies offer maintenance packages. If we say, this is how many vehicles, this is how many lights, and we want a maintenance package, we don't want to have to deal with it for the next 10 or 20 years. If something goes wrong with the vehicle, or if a car gets hit and wrecked, what happens to the vehicle? What happens to this stuff? Those are some questions that I certainly plan to ask them. Does that make sense to everyone here beside me? Police chief,
Yes, it does.
fire chief.
Yes, what I would like to ask is, when we get into the process of looking at particulars with the individual companies, I'd like to be involved, because we had some issues with the last one. I mean, the ability to turn these systems on and off, the ability to have these systems come on automatically, because some of the equipment that we have responding doesn't necessarily have to go full lights and sirens. So we want the ability to silence some of these systems. So I just like to be involved with the discussion.
Well, what I would say is, once I get my fiscal note put together, Chairwoman Tyus, I would ask that the next step and I'll ask our attorney Lou, he's the one who reached out to two companies, responded. I would ask them that we bring them two companies in for a presentation. And my goal in this was to get this thing out by Christmas, get it like off the floor, done, over. Seems fast, but I'm still kind of figuring that once I get past the fiscal note, which I should be able to do sometime during the next day or so, then I would ask if we could bring the companies to come in, that they can answer these maintenance questions and all the different things like we did when we had the body camera stuff. The body cameras also, it was a lot of questions, who's going to store the information and all the different stuff. I don't think there's information to store on this, but Chief and Jamie, does anybody have questions or comments on that then, or?
Yeah, I'd also like to be involved if
Right.
possible. I got to make sure it's and it would, I'm sure they'd ask anyway, but any of the vendors will need to know what software we run our signals on, so to make sure it's compatible, that their stuff actually works. But I'd involved as well.
So I would ask if the chairwoman, I think what we do is we'll bring the two chiefs and Jamie in the two companies that actually responded in one at a time. If you would please, and let's kind of see if we can't roll on this a little bit then. That would make good sense. And it would make good sense that way. The people that actually know, like Jamie and the chiefs, will be able to ask direct questions to them so we all feel comfortable and move forward on this. Is that okay?
That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And the more information we have, would like to ask each of these gentlemen a question, if you don't mind.
Oh, no, I'm done. I have what I need for my fiscal note.
Okay. Is there anybody that would have a problem with this system if we installed it? Starting with, I guess, the police chief.
I don't know enough about it to know what to ask or not ask. I also will bring someone with me for the next meeting, someone from our IT department and from fleet and services who do the installs, to make sure it doesn't, because we've got a lot of stuff on our car between mobile ticketing, the in-car camera, the laptop, and everything else that's in there. I want to make, we've already got oversized alternator and dual batteries, just to make sure that we're not tapping too much and that it doesn't interfere as it sends its signal with anything else. So I'll bring them because they may know better what questions to ask the vendor.
All right. What about you, Chief Jacobson?
No, I agree with Chief Sack. All of our trucks have quite a bit of equipment installed that pulls and does drain on some of the battery and alternator systems. The tracking system, which is basically what this is going to have to coordinate with our current tracking system. The other issue that I do want to bring up, and I'll bring somebody from IT as well to make sure that our programs do coordinate it with the same systems that they are working off of. But we also do a lot of responses with automatic aid and mutual aid with the counties. And I know some of the counties are going to different systems for light refreshing and controlling. So it also might have an opportunity to where we can save some funds, if we're able to coordinate this type of system as a regional type safety net, if you will. If St. Charles is doing it, and I know there's some counties that surround us, some of our fringe counties are also doing this. If they've already got the systems in place, all we're doing is expanding it to take in parts of other communities with the city. So it gives us the ability to make a little more money, but also reduce our overall cost.
St. Louis County also has a resolution and board bill. They're also moving toward the system.
So it makes
St. Charles kind of.
And use the system so they all interact as we move around the entire region should we have a major disaster.
Well,
Okay.
that would be kind of cool, and a question we can ask that group. But yeah, they're also moving in the same direction.
And also, Commissioner Wilson, do you foresee any problems? And let me just say this. Growing up, we knew when we heard the sirens to pull to the side of the street. This is a different city that I live in now because they raced the sirens, okay? That was not what you did. When you heard it, I don't care which way you were going, north, south, or east, or west, you pulled aside and then you let the emergency vehicles go through. So ever since I lived in St. Louis, which is since 1978, I have never understood why people think that that's all right to race the emergency vehicles. It could be one of your loved ones. It could be your house. It could be anything. So if we could also have an element of education, because I'm beginning to think that they don't teach drivers training and ed in schools anymore, that they need to have some kind of training to make people understand you are not to race the emergency vehicles. You are pulled to, if you can, the right-hand side of the road, but if not, the left side, and open up so that they can go through, because you don't have to really follow the red lights or whatever lights, but it is, I know why he's doing this, but I just really wish people had more courtesy and more understanding of what an emergency vehicle means and how those few minutes could save a life. Commissioner Wilson, do you have any problems or foresee any problems with this?
I'd also like it to turn everybody's phones off too while they're at it. I will say this will be a lot different than the first version we had a long time ago. It was just fire back then. This will be fire and PD potentially. So that's with the number of vehicles out there from our own Humble division. That's the traffic division, which my role is to think about the, moving traffic. And we've got a lot of coordinated traffic on our arterials. The way these emergency preemption works is it interrupts coordination. So it breaks the sync between traffic signals in order to do something immediately to push the emergency vehicles through, which is fine. I just want to make everyone aware that as you do this, and the fire trucks go through and it does what it's intended to, that it will take several traffic signal cycles, probably 5 minutes to get back in step. So worst case, you're at a rush hour and it happens and they come through, it pushes them through, but then afterwards, everything's going to be very congested because it takes a while for the traffic signal to catch up where it was before to get back in sync. So it's one thing when we had it back then with fire, but this will, Chief Jankerson, I think, said 75. And if we're talking, 100 or so more, 200 police, that's definitely a larger potential impact on traffic signal timing. But just from that perspective, so if there's a higher priority and it's emergency vehicle response, that's great. I just want to make sure people are aware of the full picture of it, and that's totally fine. They're out of step after. I just don't want everyone surprised about that. And I'd say that my last note is something we've already said several times, including the chiefs, is the maintenance. That's the downfall. We got great ideas,
Right.
but we don't to maintain them. So, but it sounds like everybody's well aware of that and planning for it. That would just be some of my bigger concerns. Otherwise, I would help out.
Well, and my reasoning behind this is the 5 people that got killed this year.
Member Carl, okay, let me just finish up my question, then I'll give
I'm
it back
sorry.
to you. Okay, so is there more wear and tear on the lights when we take them out of synchronization? Is that what you're saying? And there will be a bigger maintenance cost? Is that the problem you foresee?
No, I'm just saying that with more vehicles enabled to do this, we've got 200 signals out there. Before, you may just have a fire truck coming through in certain areas, maybe hitting 25% of those. But now if you got police out there, we're hitting 50% of our signals out there, which even more areas where it's going to get congested after the fire trucks and police have already gone through, and it'll take the signal from a software perspective, no physical wear and tear, from a software perspective,
Okay.
some time to catch up and get back in sync.
Will that be confusing at intersections when it's trying to go back in sync, or will there be something that's definitely red? Will north and south be definitely red and east and west be green, or will they all be green? What will happen with that?
So you'll set, for this preemption, it'll detect where it's coming from and make sure just that direction traffic's green and there's nothing conflicting with it. And then once they're gone, it'll snap back into its normal phasing for that intersection, and nothing again will be in conflict. But where you'll see it probably the most is tightly spaced intersection. We got 3 signals in a row, perhaps like a diamond interchange and a signal on either side of it. You'll see some congestion where you're going to get green for a while after the fire truck's gone, but you wanted anywhere to go because everything's filled up in between, because they were held there out of normal operation. So it'll take a while to recover, and that's fine and dandy. I'm just saying that's some of the stuff that the motoring public will see afterwards.
All right, so it'll be like a rush hour. So we might have a lot of people in the middle of the intersections because they pull there and then they can't. Because if you ever go to Highway 40 and Kings Highway doing rush hour right by Barnes, they just pull out in the middle of that intersection. They have no place to go. And I was always taught that you stay and let the intersection get clean. So if you miss the light, the other people can go. So I never understood why they would do that, but they still do it no matter what. Okay, so is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, I hope they still teach common sense like that, but
I had driver's training and ed and a stepfather that made me learn how to drive. So, and I still have those rules, keep flashers, keep something to charge your battery, blankets, all of that. I got a first aid kit. I still have all that stuff in my car because that's what I was taught. So anyway, I'm sorry, Alderman Vaccaro, you can proceed.
Oh, okay, so Chief, we've had an ambulance hit this year, haven't we?
We've had a couple of them hit this year.
How much did that cost us in the cost of an ambulance? And what about the
Injuries.
injuries?
Cost of an ambulance, we're probably looking at about $320,000. And then you've got issues going with ongoing litigation with regards to the patient you were carrying in the back of the ambulance. And then you have cost of workman's comp for the firefighters and medics who were riding in the front and the back of the ambulance. So you approach $1 million very quickly
Right, per incident. So I mean,
per incident, correct?
that could easily cost the city a couple $1 million this year. And police chief, the incidents where the people were killed, aren't we being sued?
Yes,
Am I dreaming that?
yes, I believe so.
So, and that could also run us way more than this system could ever cost us, in my opinion. You know, what I'm saying is, for the little bit of disruption in the 5-minute cycle for the lights to get back in order, you know, I think when you start talking about lives, you know, and literally the system, when it's all said and done, it's probably going to cost us less than the ambulances and the police cars and the lawsuits. And again, we can't put a dollar amount on the loss of life.
Right.
And you know, and I think there's a lot of things that we need to work out. And I think coordinating with the county would really be cool if they, because they're looking at it too. You know, I just know that, and I know, Chief, that you say they stop at the lights, but usually when they're going somewhere, they're going pretty fast. And I don't blame, you know, I think they need to get there fast. And I think these are good guys. I'm pretty sure that when the school was getting shots, I'm pretty sure they weren't stopping at every light looking 2 ways. They were getting there. And I don't blame them. And I'm thankful that they did get there. When I was having my heart attack and we called for the ambulance, of course it was 2 o'clock in the morning, so they got here pretty quick. But I don't know, I've been stuck in traffic before with in that police car so much, but fire trucks and ambulances behind me and they're blowing their horn and I don't know, I can't climb over the cars in front of me and then they got to go into the oncoming traffic. You know, the only other one, Jamie, that I thought would kind of be a good thing for this, even though it disrupts stuff, is, and I'm going to add extra in for vehicles, but I'm thinking the snowplow trucks. You know, they a lot of times won't plow the roads until at night because the traffic really blocks the snowplows. It's just something to think about, you know, but if the snowplows had the ability to have green lights in front of it and plow the streets, we could actually get the streets done, you know, in a safe manner. These are things that are going through my head, and it just seems like the right thing to do. And I think we all agree on that, I would hope. But anyway, Madam Chair, that's all I really hit. I appreciate these guys and their expertise showing up. I have really good questions. I wanted them all together like this because I could have asked the police chief, and he's been very respectful of any time I've asked him anything, or the fire chief or Jamie. But I thought at least they can bounce off each other. And since all our meetings have to be public, I figured this was the best way to get everybody in one room.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone on the committee that has a question of any of these three gentlemen? Is there anyone?
I do.
Alderman Bosley? Hello? I heard somebody say I do, and it wasn't a female voice. Okay. Alderman Bosley, did you have a
Have
question?
some questions. I am not sitting at 60 some outside trying to buffer. Can you hear me well?
Now we can.
That's better.
Can you,
You're
I do, but I don't
buffering
know if you can hear me or
again.
not.
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes. I think you should start back up again. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me
Yeah,
now?
that's what I'm trying to fix. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Okay. As far as the police cars and other cars needing to have the system put on it, we know that there are also a lot of police cars that are also in need of. It was.
Cutting out.
I appreciate that. Okay. Yes, sir. I am. No, we got folks trying to steal our cars around here. I'm so sorry. Yes, sir. We'll talk about it. I appreciate you. Yes, sir. Okay, good looking. Thank you. Sorry about that. We had a break-in last night over on the block, and everybody's kind of heightened, broken our houses. But nonetheless, I'm sorry. So there are some police cars that, as we know, need to be serviced. We have some issues with mechanics as well. My question would be, if we put these new systems on these older vehicles that we know at some point in time need to be changed out, we, at some point in time are going to have to buy new vehicles as well. Is that system something that we can take out of the police vehicle or off the police vehicle and easily transfer it to a newer vehicle that we're looking at as commissioning as a police vehicle or emergency response vehicle as well? We do know we have a lot of old vehicles, so I guess that's a part of the maintenance question as well. So I'm not sure exactly who would be able to answer that particular question in terms of whether or not the system can be just continuously transferred from one vehicle to another, right? Or if there's an accident that happens with a police car, do we have insurance on these, on the system or whatever is there that we install on the police car in the event that we have an accident and it's destroyed. Also with the street lights that we are looking at putting these into, there are multiple instances that we know of reckless driving in the city where they hit these street lights fall over. We got to get those replaced as well. So with that, are we able to insure the thousands? We're gonna put $5,000 into every vehicle, then put another $6,000 into every single stoplight. Is there a way for us to insure our investment at the same time if it's not working incorrectly? And it's not like that's going to happen every single day, but having to replace them at some point in time, is there a system being set up to ensure that we don't have to continue repeat costs that we've already incurred while implementing the system to not necessarily maintain it, but ensure that its use, because it's supposed to be used once again to slow down vehicles and ensure that individuals that are not only pedestrians but other drivers on the road that aren't in emergency service vehicles are paying more attention to the stoplights and giving the right of way for those individuals that are in emergency vehicles. So in the event that does not happen, and this is specifically for, once again, vehicle safety, what type of insurance barrier do we have in the event that maybe this system malfunctions or it does work correctly, but once again we hit a stoplight in the meantime and it just becomes a part of, the same thing that's been kind of ongoing at that intersection. We just go to the company, get another one, just trying to get some general idea on where we are in terms of after really footing the bill and not just the maintenance piece. What does it look like with that actual, entity or company, allowing us to have some type of a working relationship to ensure we're not just giving them $5,000 every single time we have a mishap or something like that. So, I guess to sum it up, that I had multiple questions there. I guess the first question would be, in the event that we have to switch out from the police vehicles that we have now, which we know at some point in time we do have to decommission some of these vehicles and get new ones. Our officers are driving around in cars that we know that they can adequately do good chasing in, number one. We've seen some of them with holes in the floors, and these officers need to feel good about being safe inside the vehicle and knowing that if they do crash or something happens in the event where they driving 80 miles per hour through an intersection, even after stopping and getting back up to a particular speed that helps them get close to the perpetrator or whatever instance of emergency needs are needed at the moment, them getting there speedily. They also have to feel comfortable in the cars that they're riding too, ensuring that, we also are spending money. I think if we're going to spend it on the intersection, we probably need to put a cage in a car or something like that. I'm not saying that this isn't synonymous with it, but, if we're talking about accidents, rollovers, all of those things that we know come with speeding, I think we should also add in, the safety of those people that are driving these vehicles as well, and see what it looks like, making sure that, we're kind of paying attention to the well-rounded aspect of the vehicle, right? We're going to put $5,000 into something. I'm not a police officer, but I do speak with them a lot, and seeing them out there in the streets and talking to them and them driving around in the vehicles that they're in and feeling even right now, like, man, I couldn't catch somebody if I wanted to. This is, I just got this car back. It's been in, sitting for the mechanic for almost 2 or 3 weeks, and look at it. It's kind of running a little slower. My check engine light. I've actually seen police cars with check engine lights on. So, with that being said, just kind of looking at the well-rounded perspective of it all, we spending $5,000 on just ensuring that our vehicles can communicate with stoplights. Just want to make sure that that's not a reoccurring cost that is, everything else is insured. So, once again, if we have to switch it out from one vehicle to the other, is that a cost that we incur for changing that system to another vehicle, or can we just simply unscrew it and stick it on another police car? Our ambulance, whether it's the fire department or
I was going to try.
police department or EMS.
I would bet even the old equipment we had, that could easily be transferred over. That was a transmitter on top of each vehicle. I would safely bet it's even easier to wire in some of the stuff now. It's probably similar to putting in GPS on a city vehicle. It's a fairly easy wiring job. I think officially the answer, maybe once we get into hearing presentation from the vendors, maybe someone from equipment services division could be present during those presentations to hear what type of equipment's being talked about, and they can kind of maybe ask the pointed questions that will inform them as to their ability to maintain this internally at the city in terms of moving the equipment back and forth, which I think is easy, but anything else with the vehicle, I think could be answered by you guys. And I think any more of your questions about the quality of what we're getting for what we're paying, making sure it's working and making sure the longevity, I think we can ask those type of questions to those vendors during the presentations and see what type of package. I'm sure they offer anything you want to pay for, but let's make sure what are the steps to ensure that we're getting what we paid for. So I'm sure it's a very good question. I assume we're not the only ones to ask that. Other municipalities are asking the same type of things. Be prepared for that type of thing and have a solution for us. So I would think the presentation is a good time to ask these type of questions.
Okay. And that makes sense. And, it would seem like the provider of the service would be able to indulge any question that we have about you know, their systems and the cost of them and what it is, because, you know, I would hope that we're dealing with folks who have this set up in multiple cities and maybe get some type of idea of, you know, where their pitfalls are and, you know, become, you know, a place where they can kind of utilize the things that they've done in the past to, you know, perpetuate a better future for us. So I don't think this is something that I disagree with at all. I just look at everything also from a you know, well-rounded perspective. I think that it's important to make sure that people are paying attention to our intersections and giving leadway to those emergency vehicles and persons that are in emergency situations. That is extremely important. But I also know at the same time that you know, we got a lot of people on the streets that are in these cars that don't even feel comfortable in the cars that they're in right now. So you know, I will just say publicly, because it is important. I know I keep it all the way true. That if we are looking at upgrading vehicles with you know, $5,000 upgrades in every single intersection to some degree, not every single intersection, but you know, 6,000 for these street lights, I think it also will be worthwhile to find some extra monies as well to ensure that these vehicles are, you know, better equipped with the other things that are needed for the officers to feel comfortable getting from point A to point B, not just crossing the intersection. And the same thing with the folks from EMS, the ambulance individuals. I mean, I'm sorry, they are with EMS, but the folks that are in the firefighters, working for firefighters as well, who are running from call to call. I haven't heard any complaints about the fire trucks. They seem to be working pretty good. But just as far as the, once again, other emergency vehicles, you know, we have heard some things. I don't want anybody to ever feel like, especially our emergency workers, that we are putting more emphasis on the vehicles communicating with technology itself, if it doesn't get to a place where we can also say that it makes the person inside of that vehicle twice as safe as well with the decisions that we are making, because they don't feel like we are always paying attention to their best interest as people. And, you know, I know that Commissioner Sachs, you do a good job. You also do Alderman Vaccaro, and, you know, everybody else on this call, but I just, we all are working towards making sure that we make the city safer. You know, and all of those things that would help our emergency workers feel more comfortable are conversations that we are, you know, kind of having now. So just while we talk about vehicles, I just want us to kind of dig and dive and make sure that, you know, if we're going to spend $1 million on anything, we need to make sure that people feel comfortable riding around in $1 million, how would I say, or being part of the plan that we're spending the money on, you know, in terms of these vehicle upgrades, because there are things already inside of the vehicle that they feel need to be serviced and taken care of. So I just always want to you know, make sure we're listening to those folks that are on the street and, you know, trying to help them out as much as possible, because those are folks that's showing up in the middle of the night, 2, 3, 1 o'clock. Those are folks who we called this night. You know, had intruders in my basement this morning at 6 a.m. Who we called? 911. So, you know, we need to make sure that they feel adequately comfortable moving around in the cars that they have, and not just about the technology that are on them, which is extremely important as well. So I'm looking forward to being able to ask those questions to the company in question. I would like to see exact numbers from the chief and the fire department and EMS on exactly how many vehicles we're looking at equipping. So we can have that exact number, and it's not kind of a maybe or this, you know, could possibly be what it is. But let's get some projected numbers from where we are now and where we plan on being, you know, maybe 2 years from now or 3 years from now as a force. And you know, also with the fire department, with new hires that we have, just whatever it is that we are looking at being able to grow to while we're making this initial investment, let's just make sure we can sustain that investment. And you know, the folks that'll be inside these vehicles, and that's just keeping it true. That's another thing we got to look at as well, with the amount of people that are leaving the city for better jobs and better you know, resources. Yeah, we got to look at a way in balancing things. I would hate to say that folks that are working in emergency services would feel like we're putting, you know, kind of more emphasis on vehicle safety than them, as far as job security and making sure that they eating good, taking care of their families. Like there's a lot that goes on when we start spending money, especially in cars. So I don't want them driving around like, yeah, we got $10,000 new in the car, but I can't get a $500 raise. So I'm just once again, just throwing as much as I can out there. We'll have discussions on it. I don't think, once again, this is a bad thing for us to be discussing at all. I think it will help us in the long run. Just want to ensure that I always throw out what I believe is also something that is important for us to conversate about as we move the needle forward on, trying to make everybody safe. So with that, I yield unless you all have questions.
Can I answer some of that, please?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
I'm asking the chairwoman.
Yes, Alderman, you can.
I'm sorry. Excuse me.
That's all right.
I'm sorry.
So we do know they gave us a number of vehicles. And we do know that we're being sued, that 2 ambulances have been hit in intersections, that we're being sued not only by the people in there. This is absolutely about making it safe, not only for the police officers, the ambulance. We're being sued. 5 people were killed in an intersection. 5 people that were killed. We're being sued. This is peanuts compared to, and when you talk about safety, this is safety of the people that are the police, safety of the fire drivers, the ambulance drivers, and for the citizens. This isn't just, we're going to throw technology. This is absolutely making it safe. And they did give me numbers, exact numbers, but I even added to it the questions I'm going to find out are the maintenance and who, what happens? Can you switch it from vehicle to vehicle? Is there physically, and Jamie might know the answer. I don't know that they physically put anything on a stoplight because it's all done by the cloud. I think it's just a number of stuff. There's some questions that I need to find out, but this absolutely speaks straight to the safety, not only of the officers, the ambulance drivers. And again, we're involved in multiple lawsuits this year from intersection incidents, that are going to cost us way more than I estimate less than $10 million for this. But I just wanted to reply to that.
Which one?
What's that? He may be on another subject right now, but that was my, thank you, Madam
All right. So, Alderman Bosley, are you finished with your questioning?
Yes, ma'am. I'm
Okay.
listening.
All right. I saw Alderwoman Schweitzer's hand up if there's no one with more seniority. Okay, Alderwoman, you're recognized.
Thank you so much. I had to step out for a short part of the fiscal note conversation. So the board bill says that it'll come out of the streets budget. Would that be all of the funds, or is that still up for discussion?
No, okay. Again, Madam Chair, can I answer that, please?
So yes, we don't have to do will you yield in here. Okay. Yes.
So no, we did that just to have something on the original. This is not going to come out of that. What I had to do is put a fiscal note and identify a source.
Right.
So we threw that in the source in a discussion with the chairwoman, who has offered to help me get this figured all out. We're going to use the COVID money. This certainly falls within the parameters of public safety, not only just for the officers and our workers, for the general public. So the source of where this is coming from will be better identified now that I can put a fiscal note together.
Okay, I appreciate it. And I look forward to those discussions. And yeah, I think what I heard from the conversation so far is that the fire chief and police chief and street commissioner are all, or traffic commissioner rather, are all tentatively on board, but want a lot more information. So I think it'll be good to keep checking back in with you all, making sure this is moving forward in a way that works with you and what you're wanting to get out of this. And I want to kind of agree with the Chairwoman Tyus on the education piece. I think that there's a lot of changes that have happened both in traffic calming in the city of St. Louis, different roads that have changed the way they're designed. And if we have a signal change coming up that, it probably makes sense to look at ARPA funds as well as to what education piece needs to go along with this infrastructure, these infrastructure changes. Because to your point, Chairwoman, if we don't have those things in place and people don't know how to do it, it could become more chaotic. And I think we're all trying to move towards less chaos on the streets, and so that people are safer, drivers are safer, emergency vehicles are safer. So I feel like that needs to be kind of a maybe not necessarily with this particular funding, ask for ARPA funds, but in there somewhere. And I would we imagine that this would be something that would be potentially added to board bill, was it 120 that Alderman Bosley sponsoring, or different place?
Or it could be a whole separate one.
A whole separate thing. Okay. Well, I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the further conversation, and I appreciate everyone's time being here this morning.
Thank you. Anyone else with any questions? Okay, so here's where I'm at. We're going to get a fiscal note drawn up. We're going to invite several companies that do this to bring it back. We're going to identify one or more funding sources. Are we on the same page, Alderman?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And we may or may not ask these gentlemen to come back when we bring the companies, so that they could bring their technical people to ask questions or have input. Is that correct?
Yeah, we'd like to have them back when the companies, because they'll know the questions to ask better than I would.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I appreciate you putting this together. I know, coming off of you were out sick for a bit, and I appreciate that you're now trying to get this as quick as we can.
Right.
I'm up against a handful of meetings. I want to try and get this done. So I appreciate that. And Chiefs and Jamie, thank you guys so much, for coming in and all you do for the city. I know that we all are, all of us are trying to work for what we believe is the best thing for the city.
Right. And I want to thank everyone also. Jamie, I was going to have you stay and answer questions about speed humps and some other things, but there's this alderman right after me who has a 12 o'clock public safety meeting. So we're not going to be able to do that. We'll have to invite you back. I have a alley bill for the first ward only. So I want to get to that so that we can we can finish and make sure we can get to that public safety hearing at 12 o'clock, not 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock.
I know. I don't know why I think because they put a legislation one at 2 o'clock. So I get to spend my whole day sitting on meetings, but
Okay.
And we have an hour though.
Okay. Well, I thought it's at 12 o'clock, I thought.
It's at 12. It's only 11.
So we don't have, well, I still got to hear my bill. So you
okay,
gentlemen are free to stay. We appreciate that. If you need to go someplace, then that's fine, because we're going to talk about my proposal to close off some of these alleys where they are dumping. I got that idea from when I have some alleys that are naturally, they run into an abutment or something, and they don't have the dumping because the people who do the dumping don't want to get trapped in an alley. And I also start driving around the street of St. Louis, and I start seeing some alleys were closed and some alleys had gates and they were pristine. And I also saw that they had street dumpsters from our refuse department. So as I start to look at this, that really became a thing that I'm looking at, not to do on every alley, but on the alleys where we have significant dumping, because even though we have cameras, people have learned how to do, and I'm not gonna say what they do to go around those cameras, but pretty easy. They know how not to be identified, including, I will say one thing, they steal other vehicles and use them. So we're looking at our community, because I butt up against the highway in several of my communities, and people get off that highway and they just dump in some alleys. And as soon as we clean up, it's more dumping, and the city is just is wearing itself out and wearing our trash and refuse department out with dumping. So that's what this next bill is all about. So you're welcome to stay, but if you got other things to do, I appreciate you and thank you, and you'll get an invitation again. Thank all three of you. Bye. Okay, Alderman Bosley, do you want
Yes,
to
ma'am.
share this meeting? Are you all right? Because
Yes, ma'am.
the next board bill is 77, is mine, so I need you to be the chair, please.
All right. Well, Alderwoman, you are recognized on Board Bill 77.
I would ask Madam Clerk if you would please read the introduction.
Board Bill number 77, introduced by Alderwoman Sharon Tyus, an ordinance to protect the public health, safety, and welfare by prohibiting the use of alleys by operators of motor vehicles for drive-through traffic in the following neighborhoods: Kingsway East, Kingsway West, Penrose, Mark Twain, requiring the posting of those allowed to use of the alley contain a penalty clause and an emergency clause.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Board Bill 77 is a significant reduction of what I passed back in 2017. We actually passed one for the whole city about the alleys and had 23 people and many co-sponsors. As I've told you before, 2 mayors back, he vetoed it on his way out. And then the mayor that we just had, previous mayor, said she wasn't going to support it, even though I found the most closed alleys in her ward, and they were clean alleys. And so that's what made me start asking a lot of questions from the street department and whatever. And, you know, how do you get in and out of it? Well, if you put a code reader up there, if a card reader up there, either one, you can get in and out. And that made me think about how years ago we started closing streets and people had all these, oh my God, how can you do that? The street closings, what I've used, have just cut traffic down to nothing. It really saved our neighborhoods in a lot of instances because people stopped coming down those streets. It did create some other problems, which is what speed humps resolve. So in many of my neighborhoods, we have closed streets or we have the speed humps, and those two things really work really well, except for that we have these people who now want to cut through alleys and they want to drive very, very fast. And we've had a lot of people, because we have a lot of people who still have their garages. And so they cut through the alleys driving. Alleys are supposed to be 15 miles an hour, and they may be driving 30 or 40. And if you're coming, even easing out of your garage, you may get hit. It's also the real thing of the dumping issue. We got to do something about this dumping. And alleys were not created as a roadway. They were created for the abutting properties that touch up against the alleys. You don't have to, in fact, I have several neighborhoods where people don't have alleys. The neighborhoods touch up against each other. I'm sorry, the blocks. So if it's the 4600 block or 4700 block of Palm, touches up against the 4700 block of Lexington, they don't have an alley in between, as is the 4800 block. So we have that all over my neighborhoods too. So, but the alley was needed for when you wanted to have a garage for people to be able to then come through and park in their garages. In the early 80s, when former Alderman Shamer was the mayor, former alderman and then former mayor, he put dumpsters in the alley. And before that, we had trash cans, and trash cans were some problem, but he was looking for a way to keep the alleys cleaner, I believe. And he put those dumpsters, but it sent a message to people who don't live in our neighborhood because we didn't start paying an extra fee for dumpsters till 2012. Before that, that was included in the taxes that you paid. And so people from the outside in different neighborhoods and mostly from in the county would come into our neighborhoods, and they would just get off the highway and dump stuff. And the more they thought they could get away with it, the more they did it. I live not that far from the highway, but we have of the 48 houses we have, about 43 of them have garages, and they use that alley a lot. So our alley stays kind of really clean because the people get out and clean it because they're bringing their cars. But for places where people have kind of abandoned their alley, and especially we have several several blocks where there are a lot of LRA problem, and they started the problem because LRA doesn't cut their grass the way they should. And if they do, they don't cut in the back. And I don't blame forestry because our city charter never envisioned that we were going to have an LRA and forestry was going to be assigned to that. Forestry was only supposed to be able to cut our parks, our property that the city owned. And then if somebody like myself didn't cut the grass, to send me a notice, and then they cut the grass and they charged me something significant. So I would get out and cut the grass. Forestry has turned into just an overworked group of people who try to cut grass as much as they can. But many of you may not know this, but they have places in the city where they cut the front yards and backyards haven't been cut in 4 and 5 years. And it's just ridiculous if you live next door to that, because we're really putting the burden on the citizens who live there as though they've done something wrong because their grass is cut. And our law says you can't be taller than 6 or 7 inches. And also our law, we have a law that says you can't, what they do illegally, pull the stuff out into the middle of the street and leave it there. Our city started violating that law back, I don't know, the 2nd or 3rd term of the former Mayor Slay. And they instituted these things that's been debilitating and humiliating to the people who live in the community. And then the whole thing of the dumping of things, that is so depressing to the people. They come out, they clean their alleys up, you could do cleanup, and the next day or so, it's so much stuff in the alley that people have done, and also contractors do this. And so we've tried with the cameras and things, and that works sometime, but sometimes people who are bound to break the law seem to spend a lot of time figuring out how to go around that law. If they would just figure out how to follow our laws, it would be a much better thing, but they don't. So I came up with, I want to test in all of my neighborhoods, some of the worst places. I want to pay out of my ward capital, not the city, to put up fencing at the alleys, really just at one end. Because hopefully there will be a sign that will say, hey, this alley does not go through, but to have a card or a punch system so that the people who pick up our trash or people who need to use it can be able to get in and out of those alleys, and test that to see if that will stop our dumping. If it will stop our dumping, I will institute it more and more. It will not be any fee upon the city. That's why there's not any kind of fiscal note, because in speaking to the people in my community, I told them, I said, well, if we do this, there might be some maintenance fee or whatever. And we talked about whatever, finding out what the charge and cost was. And also people agreeing that they will pay $2 a month or $3 a month or whatever it took after we get through with this test, so that they could have a card and some money would be set up in an account. So if they need to fix the gates, we looked at different kind of gates, and we got the kind that we have. We looked at the kind that we have when we go into our parking lot on City Hall. There's some that are, if you go by Sumner High School, Sam Moore put some kind of just swing out regular gates that you would put in a trail in a big park. He has that at Sumner that he closes certain parts of the streets off. Well, he had them before he passed, and he used them to close the streets off at a certain time. And then you can get some smaller ornamental gates or larger ones. Just depend on what people wanted to put into it. I tend to be on the conservative side with city money, so it would be something that wouldn't be the ornamental gates. If you go down to in like the 200 or 300 block of Union, right before you get to Forest Park, they have gated off their alleys, and they put really tall gates, and they're very ornamental and probably costly. I didn't really want to do that. What I really wanted to do is just stop people from also going through alleys. We have people going through the alleys and they're testing for garage doors and things like that. And my thing is to keep people in the city of St. Louis. When I first started closing streets off, there were people that thought that we were gating ourselves off from another neighborhood. You live right across the street from another neighborhood. You weren't gating yourself, didn't keep them from walking down the streets. It just really was keeping the traffic that was going down the street so fast. So this is not meant to keep anybody out or do anything except for those people who would break the law. In this board bill, it defines what a budding property is, what an alley is, what through traffic is versus destination traffic. If I live on an alley and I'm going to my garage, that's destination. If I'm just cutting through from Kings Highway as fast as I can, that is through traffic. It defines refuse. It does a restriction on who could be in there in the alleys, and it talks about the tenants, the owners, of course, federal and state officials and local party elected officials in the city, refuse employees, police, fire, EMT, utility employees that use the alley, truck drivers servicing a vehicle. So if somebody's car breaks down, you can have AAA or whoever come into the alley. We're not trying to prevent any of that. We're just trying to prevent that thorough traffic, that through traffic that drives too fast, or the people who use the alleys as dumping. Okay. There is a penalty in this. It's a requirement before you can close an alley. If this, because this only enables in these neighborhoods that I represent, you have to have a posting for so many days before to let people know this alley is getting ready to be closed, and here's the posting, and you can't just cut through here anymore. And there's also a 4-step penalty, first time penalty, second time, but if you just keep doing it, the penalty gets to be more. And it doesn't prevent other criminal, if you're doing other criminal activities, then you can also be charged with that. Has an emergency clause, because we need to try to get on this right away, because I tell you, every single day with the limited amount of staff we have for bulk refuse, every single day I have a problem with people calling me about dumping. I mean, I went through and just looked up dumping from my email, and it is overwhelming. And if it's overwhelming for me to read about it, I can't imagine what it is for our people who have to clean up our alleys and trying to keep them cleaned up all over the city. And we don't have enough. And having a conversation with Randy, we are way understaffed in the bulk department, as we are in refuse, plain refuse. So this is just a way to test to see if this will work. If it doesn't, we won't do anymore. And we can easily open those gates. But if it's something that does cut down on dumping, it's something I want to do. One of the things I did, because I've sat on streets since 1991, is in several places. We had some places where people were dumping, and we went to roll carts, and they voted to go to roll carts. And that actually stopped people. For some reason, the roll carts, they don't look at as quite, oh, well, let me put this big furniture next to it. So in a lot of places, we did them along Euclid, and the refuse department called me and said, hey, it's a lot less dumping. So this is all toward public safety in our alleys, and also in public health with the dumping.
All right. Do we have any questions from members of the committee, or do you have any speakers today?
No
Someone?
speakers. No.
No speakers. All right, so we'll just open it up for questions. We don't have to necessarily go down the line. If there's anybody who has a question from the committee, just raise your hand. If there's no raising hands, just pop on in. Get that a few seconds. Anybody?
I have no questions. Sounds good.
Okay, go ahead, Alderman Carl. Did you say you had no questions?
I have no questions. It sounds good, and it's to her own neighborhood, and it's she, every older person knows her neighborhood, knows what alleys need to be taken care of. This isn't something we're going to gate every alley throughout the city. It makes sense. The neighbors are going to know, they're going to pay the maintenance or whatever. And again, I would assume she's not doing it on every alley, but the alleys to stop the dumping. I don't have that particular problem in my neighborhood, but I can see where this can be very helpful. So, I mean, you're not going to drive a truck full of trash trying to figure out how to get around the gate. You'll just like a car with a club on it.
Yeah.
Probably not going to steal that one. You probably just look for a different one to steal. So no, I think she's on track, and I think the neighbors that are having these issues will probably appreciate it. So I have no comment. I have a comment, but no question. I'm sorry.
Understood. And I agree as well. I think that, especially with the dumping and different things that we are trying to alleviate from being in the inner neighborhoods, the alleys definitely are being used as a thoroughfare, to get from point A to point B and doing things that are destructive to the community. So, with that, definitely appreciate you bringing this bill forth, Chairwoman, and hopefully we get to see it do some great things, and something that we could probably mirror at some point one time in other North Side neighborhoods and West Side and other places in the city that are having issues where the community feels that this could be a potential, stop to those particular issues. So with that being said, I will take we'll entertain a motion to pass out
Can
Board
I
Bill-
close on my bill first? I
Oh,
want to
yeah, I'm
say,
sorry.
okay, thank you.
Me.
I want to say, I had a lot of Southside aldermen before, Alderwoman from the 14th, Carol Howard, was one of the first people to sign up because she lives, I guess, part of her neighborhood is against highway. So she's having the dumping. So I think this is an issue all over the city of St. Louis. We may see it more harshly in some neighborhoods, but I think it's a tool to be used with limit all throughout the city. I want all our neighborhoods to have clean alleys, and I kind of am sad because what former Mayor Vince Shamel, we used to have alley inspectors. I would love to see them back because that's what they did. They went down the alleys and inspect. And if I could ask this mayor to do anything, I would love to see some alley inspectors come back out and do that. So he got rid of them, and people have kind of, a lot of people have abandoned alleys. So I did a lot of research in places like Cincinnati and stuff. They have closed their alleys off to only the people who live, and they have parties in their alleys, and they do all kind of things to make sure people understand that really your alley is part of your property to the middle of the line and the length of your property. And as clean as the front of your house is, that's how clean the back of your house is. And when you have to put up with somebody else bringing and dumping stuff behind your house all the time, it is really depressing and unfair. And I'd ask for a do pass recommendation on Board Bill 77 from the committee.
I will make a motion, if you're taking one, that we pass Board Bill 77 out with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
All right, it's been moved, and we get a second. I'll second that. Second. All right,
Previous
who was
roll.
that?
Yeah, I'll
I
call.
don't think I was on previous row,
Oh, okay.
so I'll object. All right, so it's been motioned by Alderman Vaccaro and seconded by, that's myself, or was that Alderwoman Tina Peel?
I have Alderwoman Ann Switzer.
Okay, Alderwoman Schweitzer, sorry. Been seconded by Alderwoman Schweitzer. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Alderman Vaccaro,
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Bosley,
Aye.
Alderwoman Switzer,
Aye.
Alderwoman Peel,
Aye.
Chair Tyus,
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard. We have 6 aye votes.
Thank you. With that, you have sustained your motion to pass Board Bill 77 out with a due pass recommendation. Congratulations, Alderwoman Tyus. I will pass the
Thank you.
chairmanship back to you.
Okay, I do want to say, I want to bring something up. Before, the reason I wrote the speed hump bill is because after we started getting speed humps, which was done politically, they started then wanting us to pay like $700 for a study, which we all knew we did not need studies. And I was opposed to that, as was most aldermen. I had one alderman on the south side. He had put in all these requests for speed humps, and then they turned all his down. He would have spent something like $20,000 or $30,000 and would not have gotten any. So we got rid of that with the legislation that I wrote. I want to say that's the same way I feel about, I've been getting things from Donald Williams about, did I want to pay for this extra striping on speed humps? I want to say that when we put speed humps in, that first of all, if there was something that needed to be extra, that should have been brought up at that time. They're talking about $700 something per speed hump. That's ridiculous to me. When we attach, first of all, a lot of us are having to do speed humps because we don't have enough traffic police officers in our community. So we're having to spend our money on something that could have been spent on something else in the community. For them to then ask us to come back and spend another $700 or $750 is ridiculous to me. We should hire somebody that does striping. We should then look into having them, whatever they're offering as a contract, we should have our own streets department do that striping. And that should be part of the thing of maintenance. Since we got this money, which was in 1994, the executive branch has found more and more ways to tell us, oh, I need your money. So I'm asking you all to resist that and ask them to hire somebody. And then they put that, and if they can't do it, I want to know why. I kind of talked to them a little bit because if it's a specialty, then it's something we should train people to do. And that's a job that we would have in the city. But for us to have to retroactively go back, and I don't know how often it would be, and try to pay for speed humps, when that was nothing anybody told us in the first place. I think they need to get a higher grade of paint or whatever, and hire several painters and do that. And please don't spend your money on speed humps to be restriped, because that is a part of doing maintenance. I'm a landlord. If somebody puts a fan in my ceiling now, I'm responsible for that fan. It becomes mine, but I also have to pay to maintain it. And I don't think that is right. That's just like asking us for studies that we did not need. Okay, we didn't do them. And that's what really made me write that speed hump ordinance. And I'm telling you, I'm just equally opposed to you spending your cash on something that, if that was a problem, they should have told us in the first place. But once we put those speed humps down, they belong to the city, and the city is required to maintain things. Anybody have any questions about what I said? Anybody have anything else that needs to be brought up in the street department, in a street committee? Okay, with that,
I would say, I agree with what you're saying. It's maintenance. It is not.
right,
If we pay to put equipment in the park, we don't have to pay to paint it again.
correct. Correct. So, well, if nothing else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, I'll do it.
Make that motion.
Second.
I will make a motion later.
Okay, all in
Right.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Yes,
Okay, by your, well, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a good day.